Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Hopefully, my lighting is a little bit more even and pleasant than it has been. A friend of mine, hello Candace, suggested a very good personal light. I got a vanity light. It does different colors and stuff too, but maybe later. Tour my lighting solutions in another video. So, D&D. I like me some D&D. My D&D books are never far from me at this point in time. I'm playing one or two games of it a week, depending on the week. I like 5th edition, and I can't leave a setting alone. I rarely use other people's settings. I like coming up with my own settings a little bit too much. So, I wanted to get a little fanciful. This is not to say that I want to get any more fanciful than other people have gotten. I want to get fanciful a little sideways. I am somewhat of a fan of the genre known as steampunk. I like the aesthetic. I like the bizarre and odd twists on technology. And I just kind of like that a Victorian bent on things. But when I expand my concept of steampunk, when we think steampunk, often we think very Victorian England, very British aesthetic to it. But at the time that that harkens to it, that historical period, America was doing some interesting stuff in and of itself, because you have a somewhat similar aesthetic on the East Coast of the United States, in New York-ish, the large population centers, where also you can imagine some steampunky things going on. When you imagine steampunky things going on in American New England, it's easy, very easy to get some Lovecraft mixed up in that. Different historical periods ish, but similar aesthetics. So if you were to mix some Lovecraft into your steampunk, or your you got your chocolate and my peanut butter, they're both delicious. That works very well. But then we move west. And this is where it gets fascinating to me, and where I kind of want to see some stuff happen in a D&D game that I run eventually. I have this campaign in mind for something I'm doing in the future, but I kind of want to walk through it here a little bit, because what else am I going to talk about on this particular Monday? To the middle of the continent, the North American continent. You go New York to about St. Louis, and that's perfectly good area. That St. Louis is kind of the rough edge of civilization there, where you're still going to have the history and the big structures and beautiful courthouses, and you can see some steampunky things happening in St. Louis. You can see some Lovecraftian things happening in St. Louis at about the same time. You can see that aesthetic trying to be there. I got a lot of family that came from St. Louis in that time period. Moving west, it gets a little wild and woolly at that point in time, though. And then this is the era of the cowboy. Much romanticized, not as well understood these days, but still, you have cowboys. And I like me some cowboys. Not the historical cowboys. You know, we're not talking about the historical cowboys, and I got nothing against historical cowboys. That's not where my brain goes, and not when I'm talking about a fictional idealization of aesthetics and cultures with a uh, technological bent. Not when I'm talking steampunk. Steampunk cowboys would be fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Uh, if you look at the ideal cowboy, the fictional cowboy, the Hollywood cowboy, the high noon gunslinger, bad guy with his army of cowpokes, just getting ready to take over this town so they can buy it up because the railroad's coming through. The railroad in steampunk. Can you imagine? Um, your historical, non-historical, fictional cowboy times during this period. The railroad is moving from the east to the west, trying to get all the way over. Now there are these. I'm going to lapse into my cowboy voice. I've been practicing my cowboy voice a little bit, not entirely voluntarily. Sometimes I do just lapse into it, as I'm about to, because sometimes you need to use your cowboy voice. I got a couple hats over there. I ain't going to put them on because I do not currently have hat hair, but cowboy voice. So you got this area what's been, more or less settled. Yeah, the wagon trains go through a little while ago. Yeah, some folks didn't make it all the way west. They got as far as they could. They found a source of water, maybe something they could use for food. They set up a town. Sometimes that town's got a fanciful name, like We Made It, or We're Stopping Here. That's perfectly good town name. And they put together themselves they dig some wells, build some houses, get a schoolhouse going. Got to build a church because you got to have your church in the middle of your town, and maybe that's all there is. Maybe that's it. Maybe there's a little bit more. And these people moving straight west on best path they could take from, say, St. Louis or a more or a similar eastern town. St. Louis was a big kicking off point for a lot of this stuff, but they're going straight west, straight lines best they could. Wagon trains, they had to forward some planes and couldn't go over or through mountains. They had to go around stuff. They found their best path, heading more or less straight west. Remember that. And founded towns and grew up, had kids. Generations have been growing up here. Having some troubles with what folks they found there and what lived there first. But, we don't talk as much about that. We will be. And now you find cattle and you're growing cattle and you're growing stuff and you got to get your cattle to the market. And you can only take it so far. So, well, you need the train to come through. You hope the train's coming through past your town. Because the train's coming past your town, you got more people coming in. You maybe get a train depot there. That'd be amazing because the train depot is in your town. Now you got mail and you got stuff coming in and you can sell stuff and you can get to bigger markets and your town can really grow and the railroad's going through your town and you aren't quite big enough for them to want to stop there, but they absolutely do want to lay track through your church. You're probably not about to have a town. And, well, the railroad would be properly, morally, and ethically obligated to compensate people for the land that they want to run their rails through. But railroad men are not known for their morals and their ethics. And they can just find some mean people who live not too far away from you and pay them much less than they would have to pay you for your land, to come in and roust you from your land. Dead or alive, does not matter to the railroad man. All they want is a track through your church. So you take the age old West tropes. Railroads coming through and they want everyone off this land and they're going to have it one way or another and what you're going to do about it. There's this one bandito. He fought in the war, and now he's all pissed off about we don't know what. But he got his boys, and they're going to come into this town. They're going to do horrible things to the people in this town, and I don't know if they can stop them. Maybe we can go hire some folks to help us with this. You know how to use a shooting iron, right? Can you help us? Cause we ain't got nothing. For every old west movie, there is a trope for every situation. Those are all adventures waiting to happen. Now, add steampunk, and you have the deposed baron sitting out there trying to cut himself a little barony out in the middle of this land that is so open and available. And well, there are people there that you can hire to do things that you need done. You can slowly build up your army in this land full of resources. And if there's people in your way, you just step on them, and eventually you'll have what it takes to carve out a bit of this wild land that upstart new country thinks they can call their own, but you need a barony so you can go back and take your rightful place under the crown, if not the crown itself. You can take your steampunk tropes and drop them in the Old West. You can take your Old West tropes and you can docker them up with steampunk. The steampunk train is coming through. It might not need tracks. It might walk. It's going to have a walking back. Train's going to come walking through. Doesn't care what it steps on. Move the town. There's so much there. There's so much potential. And now, so let's take that. So what do you do with all these concepts? Well, you roll up characters, and let's do this in D&D. Let's do this in D&D, and let's throw all the D&D trap, whatever we want to. There's no limit. How did this happen? What's the cosmology behind this? What makes this land be like this? We can get there later. We started our ending point that we wanted to get to, and we'll build backwards when we get to that. I want elves and orcs fighting on the Old West with swords and magic and six irons while the steampunk train roars up on them, perhaps literally if they've used a fire elemental to power the fuel box, storming up on you, getting ready to move through this town. You got a posse of orcs that is just looking mean-eyed at you, trying to keep you from coming into the town, and you and your friends have got to save this town, stuck between that orcish horde and that roaring, stampeding train coming up behind you. Moment to discuss culture. There were people who lived here before there was colonization from England on this continent. And it became popular during the era of cowboy films and westerns in fiction to um, villainize those individuals, those people who lived here, uh, whose land this was, and who were not consulted about it not being their land anymore. They were easy to demonize as they were the other, and they were a convenient plot foil for many uh, fictional retellings of how we managed to expand civilization from the East Coast to the West Coast in North America. And you'd like to avoid that. Avoid the demonization and villainization. You also don't want to erase their presence from this sort of thing, because there is a richness and a culture there. There is a schools of thought that we would consider alien to most other Western thinking. There, if you're going to throw some D&D and steampunk into an Old West campaign, you need to take some time to consider what role the Native Americans in this area are going to play. You can move around those subjects. You don't have to jump into it directly, or you can have this rich and deep culture well and properly represented in your game. That being a people who are vastly more in touch with the natural order of things, who understand the proper manipulation of the land and its resources in a harmonious manner as opposed to a ruinous manner. You have classes in D&D that would be amazingly suited to individuals from this culture taking part. Stereotypically, rangers and druids, right there, folks who are more nature aligned, would fit right in there. Warlocks and shamanistic practices and clerics, because they had the pantheon of their cosmology also just rich and deep, and begs a little examination of looking into that culture to see what inspirations can come from the best of it. Also, some of the fiercest warriors that this land has ever known, technological advantages notwithstanding. Now let's take a step sideways from that. I mentioned an orcish horde. This also bears little discussion. There's a history in Dungeons and Dragons, other role-playing games, the genre of literature as a whole, to culturally demonize, to take a ethnic group, a racial group, and set them up as the big bad. Not unlike American filmmakers doing in the era of the Western, setting up the Native Americans as the bad guys, as the opposition to be defeated if the heroes are going to succeed at their task. And you have groups like, it's the orcs, it's the drow, it's those people that are evil because it says evil on the racial description in the book. They're the opposition, and we need to get them and see how many experience points we can carve out of their scalps. And traditional hack and slash role-playing games, sure, that's fine. Villains as written. It's boring, though. It is so boring to have crafted another culture, another identity, a way to look at things and see things that is not human or demi-human, that does not have the sensibilities of the civilization as default. and say, okay, those are the bad guys. Are there bad guys who are orcs? Sure, absolutely. Are there bad guys who are drow? Yeah. Yeah, they come from a background that makes that actually kind of likely, unfortunately. Are there bad guys that are elves? Yes. Are there bad guys that are humans? Yeah. Sometimes I think humans make the best bad guys, personally, just because we have so much historical precedent for humans being bad guys. Um, but is that a result of, oh, they're humans, so they're bad guys? No, any more than they're orcs. So they're bad guys, right? I prefer to think of these as one, cultural differences. Humans are not going to perceive the same good evil values as, say, orcs or goblins. Um, two, some of those individuals are going to have a desire to live in harmony. The orcs are warlike. They like to fight amongst themselves because that is how their society handles dominance. Is that particularly evil? Well, it depends on how they're going about it. Two, oh, okay, I've started enumerating and doing it over and over again. Bad habit of mine. Long and short of it, the individual might be evil. It is lazy to paint a race or a species as evil. Um, you might just have to plow through hordes of them to deal with your situation. You might also be able to achieve the same ends by seeking an understanding with the proper individuals there. If there is some warlord who is all up in his own Cheerios trying to make sure that everyone knows he is the best and he will stomp on absolutely anyone who tries to say he is not the best. Oh, you think you can be best? We will have to fight so I can demonstrate to you that I am best. You got to put him down. At the very least, you got to knock him down a few pegs. That probably means taking him to 0 hit points or less. I'm not going to say how you want to do it, but not every one of that species you find is going to be that individual. A species, a race, a culture can't function if everyone is doing that. There is someone making sure there's food on the table. There is someone making sure everyone got something to put over themselves, something to sharp in their hand. There are craftspeople. There are leaders. There is some form of education. There are people in charge of caretaking in that civilization, just as there are in yours. And you want to make that differentiation. It's an orcish village. We should wipe them all out because they're all orcs. That's not the act of a good person. And that should be something fairly clear and plain. It should be no different in seeing that than in seeing how cultures have historically interacted in our own world. Food for thought. Back to the action. So, here's the confluence of three things. Here's the Old West. And I want some of the classic Old West aesthetics. I don't want to abandon too many of these things, and I don't need to abandon too many of these things. I like the style. I like the wide-brimmed hats and the dusters and the high boots. Uh, all of which tends to get adapted in one way, shape, or form to D&D art anyway. Um, Denim's good. Denim's a perfect, industrial fabrics, steampunk, industrial revolution, Victorian era. Sure, denim. Denim's a perfectly good substance. Uh, all kinds of manufactured textiles. You can magically manufacture textiles. You can weave stuff. Stuff can be hand woven, and that's still going to be very expensive artisanal stuff, probably in much better supplies. or that's what folks who have either elected not to have the industrial stuff, or have simply never been given access to the industrially produced clothing. But folks that are going to be out rough and tumble riding horses all day long and whatnot, uh, they're gonna want something not that far off from denim. Um, I like me some revolvers. I am a big fan of the revolver as a weapon in a role-playing game. There's some more advanced weaponry in the Eberron setting, and here's where you get a lot of steampunk influence in your D&D. And like me, Eberron, firearms little bit clunky, little bit underpowered in my personal opinion. I don't think. Yeah, here another rant incoming in a minute. But I like me some revolvers, and if you can manufacture the turret gun from Eberron, you can manufacture a revolver. If you have any magic item in alchemy whatsoever, you can have cased ammo. So you can have 1840s to 1870s firearms represented pretty well. Tell you something, a ranger with a Sharps 50/50 Buffalo rifle is probably one of the most terrifying things you should ever be able to meet on the plains of the western United States. And I will eat my hat if it ain't. I can safely say because I'm not wearing a hat. The damages for firearms in Eberron are comparable to the damages for weapons in the D&D core book. And I understand that. There's a certain amount of consistency that you should be had. But at the same time, I would not like to be hit with a longsword. I would very much not like to be hit with a longsword. I would very much not like to be shot with a 45. Chances are I will survive a hit from a longsword. If someone who really knows what they're doing hits me exactly right, if we are, if I am unarmored, I may die from that hit. I could lose a limb, or take a hit that will compromise my internal organs to the point where I am not going to survive the hit. But it is an off chance. Chances are I may be grievously injured. I may be in the process of dying after I get hit, but the blow will probably not immediately kill me. This is reflected pretty well in the D&D rules. Low-level characters have a great deal to fear from a longsword hit. Higher-level characters, not so much. I am probably not surviving most 45 hits. Even if it catches me in center mass, which is where most people who are firing are going to take the shot for, chances are there is going to be enough damage done by even a single bullet penetrating my mid to upper torso that I am going to cease metabolic function at around that point. People do survive gun hits, but they do not survive. But there is a fairly high rate of not surviving them, and there are so many factors that go into that. The type of bullet being used, and the precise location of the hit, and the proximity to the shooter. There's just so much. The hydrostatic shock. You could kill someone by shooting them in the foot if the hydrostatic shock circumstances are just right. If you get that pressure wave of the hit moving through the body in such a way that it disrupts enough internal function. Gunshots are terrifying wounds. even a 22 can be lethal if you get hit in the right spot. As shoulder hits from those are from the front, terrible, because they're not going to go all the way through your body, but they will bounce off the inside of the shoulder blade and start bouncing through softer tissue. Rough stuff. Rough stuff. Uh, but having the firearms in D&D doing the same level of damage as the melee weapons from D&D, probably not the most accurate representation. Be perfectly honest, I'd probably have revolvers doing about double the damage. Just 2d8. 2d8 seems like a 2d8 for a moderate caliber, 2d10 for a large caliber. That Sharps 50-50 Buffalo rifle I was talking about, a 50 caliber shotgun fired out of an octagonal barrel, is not going to have tremendous amount of range. But if you're firing slug, I'd go as high as 2d12 or 3d10. That should be a fairly devastating weapon, and let the dice codes reflect that. Am I worried about someone getting hold of that and shooting everything dead? No, because there are terrifying things in the Old West. The Sharps 50-50 Buffalo rifle was created so that you could have a chance of killing a buffalo in one shot. Buffalo were huge, tremendous creatures, and though they were hunted to nigh extinction, they took a number of those hunters with them. I was fortunate enough to grow up near a bison preserve in St. Louis. The Bush Wildlife Preserve actually did a tremendous amount of job in making sure that we still have bison today, and for which I'm very grateful. But the Western United States hosts a number of terrifying things in history, in actuality, in textbook reality. Buffaloes and rattlesnakes, condors and eagles, things that can just do monstrous amounts of damage. Some of the best cougars and mountain lions, things that will tear you apart. Now you throw some D&D into that, and you get some magic into that. And then you throw some steampunk into that, and you get some clockwork and cyborging into those things. And the Old West is just amazingly terrifying. You're going to want to have something that you can put something down with in a couple of shots. So, yeah. And a dragon in the Old West? The gold rush of 1849 was bad enough without dragons getting involved. Oh, there's gold. There's gold. Do I hear gold? There's gold. There's gold over there. There's gold over there. Why are there people where I might have my gold? Fighting a dragon to get to your claim in 1849 would be astonishing. That would be. Well, you got everything you need to go stake that claim. I have family. Some of my family from St. Louis, they did not come out west for the gold rush, not for the gold. They were shopkeepers. They came out west to found trading posts so that people who were out here for the gold could spend their gold on boots and better tools, so people could buy the equipment necessary to go out and get the gold. My uncle Hiram founded a little town, but he didn't want to name it immediately after the family name, Hiram Coram. Might have sounded a little bit pretentious, so flipped the back name around, named it Muroc, California. There is an Air Force base there. But yeah, that's how my folk got out to the West Coast. So now that trading post that has the picks and the boots and plenty of denim wear for folks to go out and get dirty in, now they got to carry magic items and healing potions And that Old West trader gets to be a more dangerous individual because they got to keep their stock against desperados who do not want to pay full price for this stuff they need to go fight the dragon, if you know what I mean. Protecting a Old West trading post in steampunk magic D&D Old West would be just fabulous. Would be one of the best games I can imagine. Because all the stuff that would show up. And then there were some populations of immigrants who were put heavily into service, servicing the railroad, working on the railroads. Recently freed African Americans. There were immigrants from China and Ireland, and all of these places that these folks were coming from, their points of origin have rich fantasy and magical lore. China, Ireland, Africa, all of them have these tremendous stores of magical knowledge and creatures, and you throw those into the mix in this trail moving west across the continental United States from St. Louis to LA, where those lines are trying to get together and make that transcontinental railroad. If it is just a railroad at that point in time, not some conduit for magical and electrical energies, or more. You throw that into the mix, and you have several varieties of dragon arguing over who gets to have the gold. You got so much that you can just drop into this melting pot of there's so much here. And now you make a character that is going to try and be the best. That's another common theme. Fastest gun in the West. Fastest gun in the West has to fight an extremely long line of second fastest guns in the West, because the second fastest gun in the West only gets to be the fastest gun in the West by beating the fastest gun in the West. And now everyone's trying to get as much initiative bonus as they possibly can, and you're really hoping that you beat your bad guy's armor, or your opponent's armor class on that very first roll, and that your shot manages to put him down. And you better have a gun that does sufficient damage at that point in time. I keep waving around Xanathars because I was looking up crafting rules, and the crafting rules in Dungeons and Dragons are pretty light. Even in Xanathars, they take up just a few paragraphs, and they're okay. They're okay. There's a scene in a Western movie that I keep referring to over and over again when it comes down to Westerns, and what I like to see in a crafting system in a game, both together. And that is from the movie The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, a scene I call Tuco Comes Out of the Desert. The Ugly, of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, one of the characters, has been engaged in a sick little game of betrayal and revengeance against one of the other characters, Goldie, the good. And Goldie has left him in the desert with just enough resources to survive. He manages to get to a town, practically dying of thirst, hydrates himself, runs into a store with no money in his pocket, none of his equipment, and asks for a gun. Shopkeeper's about to close, but the guy's kind of desperate, and he looks like he needs some stuff, so he shows him some of his guns, the stuff that he keeps in the front of the shop, and they're all gimmicky and gadgety and some newfangled stuff. And Tuco looks at revolvers, Smith and Wesson, Colt. Guy shows him the good gun case, the stuff, the old reliables. And Tuco pulls a few of them out, tries them. They don't quite work for him. So he disassembles 3 pistols right there, takes off the barrels, pulls out the action in the cylinders, rolls them around a little bit, checks them for their balance, looks at the straightness of the barrel, how they're rifled, and assembles 1 pistol out of the 3, out of the best components he can get. And from the moment he puts that together, he drops a couple bullets into it to test them in the back of the shop, and it's a gun that is like a piece of his arm. It is just an extension of his hand, and he can work magic with that pistol. I want to see someone do that in a D&D Steampunk Old West game. And at that point, you got to fudge rules. Can I make a roll on my proficiency with gunsmithing tools to see if I know how to put this thing together? And the higher the roll, the better your gun's going to get, and maybe you can. You just kind of fudge that at that point in time. I'd like to standardize some rules for that, but that's something for another time. Well, this is just me wandering through my brain on the subjects associated with Steampunk Old West Dungeons and Dragons. I do want to do this game at some point in time. I might have to write some down, actually make some notes. But again, that's the future. Thank you for following me along in this particular rant. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you did enjoy the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. What are your thoughts? Is this something that you would like to play in as a player, or that you'd like to run as a dungeon master? Do you have your own ideas about what you would and wouldn't incorporate into a game setting like this? Leave me a comment. Any subjects you'd like to hear me cover, things you'd like to hear me talk about, leave me a comment below. I will really enjoy getting your comment. You'll really enjoy leaving me one. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why not? My channel is awesome. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you do, also hit the notification bell so that you're alerted when my videos become available. If you'd like to contribute to the channel in a more substantial manner, I invite you to hit me at my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps, allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum, this is What Has Mattered to Me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.